What up guys, Supermel983 here. It's time to bring you me top 25 albums of 2020. Now, as you know, 2020 has been a pretty shit year because of COVID-19, ruining a lot of people's lives and stuff like that. But one thing you can take away from 2020 is that it has had an amazing soundtrack. And I'm talking about all the releases that we've had this year. It's been another incredible year for new music. So many great albums, so many to talk about. And today I'm going to be talking about a lot of releases. So stick around because this is going to be a long one, I can tell you that. Now, we're going to do the usual Super Metal Honourable recommendations and the top 25 list. But I've got some other releases that I do want to talk about to you today, which is my favourite single of the year, my favourite split release of the year, and I've got 5 EPs to talk about in this video. So this is going to be a long one, so stick it out and you can see some new music, maybe the stuff you haven't checked out yet, and I highly recommend you check out all these releases because they are absolutely incredible. So let's kick things off with my favourite single release of the year, and it's not really a one that's been on an album, it's just something that I've heard in this year, and that has to go to Spiritbox with their single Holy Roller. Absolutely incredible single. I've listened to that so much this year. It's probably been most played song of the year. Not just their first version that they did, but the second version with Ryu of Crystal Lake. Both versions I've been spinning the shit out of, and they are both incredible songs, and I cannot wait to see what Spiritbox brings in 2021. Hopefully it's a full-length album, and I guarantee you I will be doing a review on it, and it will be in the top albums list, guaranteed, because I absolutely fucking love this band. Alright, my favourite split release of the year is going to go to Strangled and Pintglass with their split entitled Geezers Worldwide. And man, Strangled in 2019, I believe it was, dropped that EP that was just one of the most intense EPs I think I've ever heard in deathcore. It was so violent to listen to, and they continue that on this EP. And then Pintglass, one of the most fun bands to come out of the UK, but they are still heavy as fuck beat down, and these two bands coming together is just a recipe for violence, if you ask me. It's absolutely incredible. Make sure you check out this one, it's punishingly heavy. Alright, now my top EP of the year, I was going to just say one, but I thought I'd give a couple of mentions to some that I think deserve a mention, and that is the new Bring the Horizon EP. Absolutely fantastic release, kind of varying up their style, going for different styles throughout the whole course of the EP's playthrough, and it's absolutely incredible. Then we've got Distant with Dawn of Corruption, absolutely incredible EP. They're just continuing to wreak havoc and bring the heaviness with that combination of down tempo and kind of like a bit of slam in there as well for good measure. Absolutely incredible release. Next, a shout out to me boys Suffer with their EP Heavy Silence, another great EP that I'll listen to so much this year. Make sure you check out those guys and check out my review if you haven't already. And I'm also going to give a shout out to Carcosa with Absent, Andrew Boehner on YouTube, his new project, kind of a modern style of deathcore, but very, very good, very intense and very heavy. Absolutely incredible release. But my favourite EP of the year, you may not be surprised about this because I did a review for it, and it has to be The Other Side by Malevolent. Absolutely incredible release. It was only 3 tracks, but man, those 3 tracks were so amazing, especially that last song, The Other Side. Another one of my favourite songs of the year. It's up there with Spiritbox, if you ask me. Absolutely incredible stuff. So yeah, and now we're going to get to the Super Honourable recommendations, Super Metal Honourable recommendations. I always mess that up every single year. And that first one is going to go to some local boys in the shape of Ground Culture with their debut album entitled How Well Do You Really Know Yourself. These guys absolutely brought out an amazing debut album. Their EP was incredible, but this is another level. Very powerful, very catchy, but still full of riffs, and definitely one of the most memorable metalcore releases that I've heard in a long fucking time. Absolutely incredible release. Make sure you check out Ground Culture. They're going to make some waves in 2021 with this album, guaranteed. Anyway, Number 2 in the honourable mentions is going to go to Tephra with Mass Failure. Now, I did a review for this not too long ago. Hopefully you've checked that out. But yeah, this album is absolutely eviscerating to listen to. Tephra are on a roll at delivering just the most pounding, most intense, and most barbaric death metal that you can muster. You know, like, this album is absolutely incredible. It's a great follow-up to Self-Created Abyss, which is grown to become one of my favourite death metal records of all time, and this is a great continuation of that, and just bringing the intensity that death metal just oozes, if you ask me. Absolutely incredible release. And the final recommendation I'm going to give you is going to go to Aversion's Crown with Hell Will Come For Us All. Yeah, Aversion's Crown are on with a new vocalist and a new dynamical approach to their songwriting, and man, this is such a powerful release. If you're a fan of Fit for an Autopsy or Thy Art Is Murder, then this is a release that will bridge that divide between those two bands, because it's like slap bang in the middle, taking both positives from both bands to create this unbridled, monolithic sounding album. Like, this is such a powerful release and something that you definitely need to hear. Absolutely incredible release. Now, I'm going to keep on looking down here because I've got my tablet just at the side with the list of albums to kind of keep this going a little bit. So before I get into the list, I'm going to just say what I say every time. Remember, this is my list, not yours. Everyone's going to have a different opinion to me. I mean, you may have the same opinion on an album, but your list is going to be different to me. So let us know in the comments, maybe your top 3, your just general favourite album or favourite release of 2020. Let us know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe and all that, you know, all that malarkey. But yeah, let's crack on with the top albums of 2020, because this one has been an incredible year, as I said before. And I'm not going to show any CDs until the last 3, because last year I did, when I revealed my album of the year, that was the only CD that I had available to show you. But obviously with all these CDs, and I don't have all these on CD, I've got my top 3 at the side, because we're going to talk about those. Anyway, coming in at number 25, we have Heaven Shall Burn with Of Truth and Sacrifice. Now, Heaven Shall Burn, I've grown to absolutely adore this band over the course of 2020, and it is because of this album. This is a double album that doesn't feel like a double album when you listen to it, because it keeps your attention span throughout the course of both discs, and man, did both of these discs kick ass, if you ask me, bringing that combination of like influences of like Swedish melodic death metal sort of stuff, like At the Gates and stuff like that in the riff writing, but then keeping that diabolical intensity of metalcore or heavier metalcore, like not a modern sort of style, like an old school sort of style, kind of like the OG metalcore tone, you know, and just bringing their A game, if you ask me. Like Wanderer, their last album was it was a good album. It just felt like a bit of a sleeper in a lot of times that I listened to it. Whereas this one, it never felt like a sleeper. It just kept me attention from beginning to end. And by the end of it, you think like an hour and a half's passed, and you're just like, wow, I need to listen to this again. Absolutely incredible album, Heaven Shall Burn, bringing their A game with this album, and I hope to see them on the Trivium tour, because it is going to be incredible. Anyway, coming in at number 24, we have the return album of the year, and that has to be The Ghost Inside with their self-titled album, The Ghost Inside. Everyone knows what happened all those years ago in that bus crash, and for them to come back with an absolute monolithic comeback album, and something that gave us chills listening to, because you could feel every sense of emotion and anxiety and everything that the band went through in between that crash happening and getting to this day. You can feel it pouring out of this release, but in emotion. But then on top of that, the songwriting is just incredible. And Jeremy from A Day to Remember and Will Putney of Fit for an Autopsy did an absolute bang-up job making this record come to life, because this is easily one of the thickest sounding albums I think I've ever heard. It's so beefy. And Aftermath, that song, man, every time it comes on, it makes me hair stand on end. And the album in general is just full of bangers and memorable hooks, and what's not to love about The Ghost Inside? This album is absolutely incredible. I will say it is a vast improvement over Dear Youth, because I wasn't too overwhelmed with that album, but I do love everything before that, and this album is absolutely incredible, and if you ask me, fantastic stuff. Coming in at number 23 is kind of like the oddball release in this top albums list, and that has to go to Igor with Spirituality and Distortion. Now, this album, for me, was an album that I was surprised ended up as high as it did on the Albums of the Year list, because it's such a unique sounding album. It's got a lot going for it. Like, I don't mean like, oh, it varies its influence. I'm talking about it actually, no track sounds like one another. You've got elements of metal, death metal, avant-garde, noise, grind, a bit of black metal, a little bit of baroque, a bit of classical, a little bit of electronic. There's everything on this album, and it really sounds so unique, but it's all over the place, but it's Igor, so it's going to sound all over the place, and I think that's what makes this album set aside from a lot of albums this year, because of how unique it sounded. And quite frankly, I think it's absolutely incredible. It's a challenging listen, but it made us like it a little bit more, so especially more than their previous album, because I felt like that was a little bit too avant-garde for me, whereas this one seems a little bit more streamlined, whereas people may say the opposite. But for me anyway, I absolutely love this album. I think it's got so much catchiness and so much variation. It's what's not to like about it, if you ask me. But yeah, incredible album. Igor with Spirituality and Distortion. Alright, coming in at number 22, we have a newcomer to this list, and that is Still Bloom with Terminal. Yeah, Melancholia was my favourite EP from last year, and then the band brought out a split with Animal, I believe it was, and that was an incredible release in general. Then they announced that they were splitting up, and then they announced that they're coming back and bringing out a full-length album. And I was kind of nervous because I wasn't a massive fan of Downer, I think it's called, and it delivered. It was Melancholia amped up to another level, if you ask me. Like, it has all the elements of Melancholia that I love, like the noisier elements, the heavier, groovy new metalcore elements, but the vocals are really aggressive and intense and just menacing sounding. Like, it's absolutely incredible. They are definitely my favourite in the new metalcore sort of genre. Like, there's a lot of bands, in my opinion, that sound too much alike. Like, you can tell, like, the influences and stuff like that, whereas Still Bloom, I think, are a standout in the genre, and you just need to hear them. If you haven't heard them before, get on this shit. This is easily some of the best new metalcore I've ever heard. Fantastic stuff. Coming in at number 21, we have Horned with Eminence. Now, this was an album that was pretty high up when it first got released, and to be honest, after listening to it even more, it still stayed in the top spectra of the top albums list of the year, because this is such an immense sounding album. Like, it is emanating inferno listening to this album. It's got elements of death metal, hardcore, beatdown, deathcore, and a bit of a HM2 sound in there from like Swedish death metal and stuff like that, and it really adds to the overall atmosphere of this album to make it even more punishing, even more deadly. And quite frankly, I couldn't stop listening to this when it first came out, and it is still an absolute menacing sounding album. And I showed quite a few, including my band members, this album, and they were mighty impressed with it, and so was I. You need to check out this album if you haven't already. That is Horned with Eminence. Fantastic release from this year. Anyway, coming in at number 20, we have Bleed From Within with Fracture. Now, Bleed From Within have been on a roll with their releases. In my opinion, when they released Uprising back in 2012, it was a game changer for the band, because they really changed up their sound and started to go in a sort of different sort of feeling direction. And then Era was the next evolutionary step from Uprising and continuing along that same sort of line and style. But Fracture is leaping ahead yet again, and in my opinion, it's absolutely incredible. It's become my favourite out of this 3 trilogy that they've brought out, because the catchiness, the riffs, the memorableness and the prowess in this album is just absolutely incredible from beginning to end. They are becoming an absolute powerhouse in the UK metal scene, and quite rightly so, because this album is an absolute powerhouse of an album. Make sure you check it out. Bleed From Within, dominating once again with Fracture. Alright, coming in at number 19 is the only black metal release on this list, and I did listen to quite a bit of black metal. It was mainly some older stuff, but I did listen to some new stuff, but nothing came quite as good as this album, and that is Achilles with Melanor. And man, this album was already released like a few months ago or something like that, or even a month ago, and man, did this album scare me listening to it. Like, I like me black metal to have a little bit of a sense of beefiness to it, in all honesty. God damn, my nose is so itchy. Like, a sense of beefiness to it that gives it real thickness. Like, I know black metal is meant to be kind of atmospheric and creepy and stuff, but when it has a little bit of heaviness on top of it, it really creates a more darker, more intense atmosphere. And then already with The Dreaming Eye by Achilles, that album was terrifying to listen to. But this is another level. Like, this actually gave me nightmares listening to this album, and it will do for you as well. This is incredible, and I cannot stop listening to this album and being chilled to the bone just listening to it, how good and how creepy it is. Absolutely incredible release, and something that you definitely need to check out if you're into your black metal. Incredible, incredible stuff. Alright, coming in at number 18, I would describe this personally as a comeback album. You may not, but I do. But that has to go to Black Crown Initiate with Violent Portraits of Doomed Escape, coming in at number 18. And man, this album was everything that I wanted it to be. Like, Selves We Cannot Forgive, I believe what it's called, their last album came out quite a few years ago, and I've been also wanting a new album from these guys, because that album was absolutely incredible. Whereas this one is that with more atmosphere, more feels, more chills, and more brighter production, and man, it executes incredible. Like, this was easily one of the most memorable sounding albums of this year, because I think Black Crown Initiate's clean vocals are some of the best clean vocals I think I've ever heard. They are up there with the likes of Killswitch Engage's Jesse. Like, his vocals are iconic, and these are too, but the riffs are incredible, the feels are real, and man, Black Crown Initiate absolutely delivered, and I do hope to see them on the Faces of Death tour, the Rise and merch one with Rivers of Nile and Archspire, and I think Black Crown Initiate are going to blow every band out of the water, if you ask me, because this album is fucking incredible. Alright, coming in at number 17, we have Justice for the Damned with Pain is Power. And man, does this album have some power behind it, man. This album is, like, if you take the horned concept that I was talking about before, elements of hardcore, death metal, deathcore, and that HM2 sound, and some beatdown elements, and then amp it up to 1,000, you've got Pain is Power. Like, this is the perfect HM2 deathcore sounding album, if you ask me. Like, man, this album just makes you want to punch people. Like, this is so intense and so anxiety inducing. Like, it is such a powerhouse of an album. Like, definitely one of the most memorable releases of this year, and something that's a lot of the time when people say what would you recommend from 2020 as an album to check out, I would normally say Justice for the Damned, Pain is Power, because man, this album is absolutely killer, and definitely something that really surprised me, because their last album was great, but this album is absolutely incredible, phenomenal even, great release. Alright, coming in at number 16, we have Polaris with The Death of Me. Now, this album was the one that I didn't listen to an awful lot this year, like, probably listened to it like just over 10 times maybe, but man, every time I listened to this album, I got chills. I was blown away by everything that is combined into this album, from the riffs, the techier sort of stuff, like the Architect sort of vibes, and the riffy sort of like post-hardcore influence stuff, and the melodic sort of chilled back sort of stuff on there. It always impressed me. And then the vocals had such a variation, from the screams to the growls to the half screams to the cleans. It was all there, and everything culminating. And listening to this album like a couple of times, like over the past like week or so, has made us go, yeah, I should have probably listened to that album a bit more. But in general, I've been listening to a lot of stuff. But every time I listen to this, it blew me away. And quite frankly, it is absolutely fucking incredible from beginning to end. Fantastic, fantastic stuff from Polaris. And I'm hoping to see them on the Never Say Die tour with Emua, Spite, and Grave Mind, and a couple of other bands on there. What a lineup that is. But anyway, incredible, incredible album. Next up, coming in at number 15, we have Testament with Titans of Creation. Now, Testament are my favourite thrash band of all times, and that has really come at home in 2020 with the release of this album, because as I've listened to this album, I fell in love with it, and it's made us go back and listen to more of their older stuff. But then I've always ended up coming back to Titans of Creation, because this, in my opinion, might top The Gathering, because that was my favourite album of these guys. Now, dare I say it, it's probably better than that, because this album is full of riffs. Chuck's vocals are just so aggressive and so enunciated. Like, I love how clear, like, you can understand every word, but it sounds so aggressive, and I absolutely love it. So make sure you check out the new Testament album, because this is, it's what Brotherhood of the Snake was, absolutely incredible, but it's just amped up another level, and man, they are on a roll, if you ask me. Absolutely incredible, incredible album. Alright, coming in number 14, we have Enough to Bleed by Revulsion. Now, this album was an album that did stay at the top of the list for quite a while, but man, this album is one of the most dominating sounding albums of 2020, if you ask me. Like, unbridled, unrelenting power and intensity. It is one of the most, it actually feels quite suffocating and dominating to listen to it. Like, when you've got it on, it just feels like claustrophobic, like how heavy and intense it is. But man, this is such a powerful release. I mean, those vocals alone, man, they kick some ass, man. And this, the riffs, they kick some ass. Like, this is generally a kick-ass album, so make sure you check out this album if you want some just intense metallic hardcore that's just gonna pound you into the fucking ground. This is definitely it. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Coming in at number 13, unlucky for some, I say that every year, but it's gonna go to Code Orange with their new album, Underneath. Now, their last album, in my personal opinion, it was okay, if you ask me. I could kind of see the hype behind them, but I wasn't too overwhelmed with it. And then when I heard, as weird as it sounds, Bray Wyatt from WWE, The Fiend's theme, I was like surprised that was Code Orange, because that was not what I remember them sound like on that. And even when I went back to it, I thought, it doesn't quite sound like it. And I was like, I wonder if their new album's going to sound like this. And it kind of does. And to be honest, it is a creepy sounding release in a lot of its delivery. But like Ego, it sounds kind of avant-garde, kind of industrial, kind of progressive, but it is still riff heavy. And man, this album I listened to so much, because it just sounded very natural sounding. Like, I know it's like all over the place and stuff, but like the production sound, it sounded raw, and it just overall added to the overall heaviness and depth of this album. Man, this album crushed, if you ask me. But it was such a memorable release, it had to make it this high in the release radar. Absolutely incredible stuff from Code Orange, and I just need to see them live now and see these songs and just be in awe. That's the plan, anyway. Coming in at number 12, we have Within Destruction with Yokai. Now, this was an album that, to be honest, I was a little bit skeptical about it, because when I first heard Hate Me, I was like, it doesn't quite sound as good as Death Wish, in my opinion. But then when they started to release more tracks, I was like, okay, they are changing their sound up a bit, adding some like trap influences and maybe some Japanese sort of music influences and stuff like that, and going a little bit metalcore in some aspects. But when the album dropped, I couldn't turn it off, and it grew and grew from, yeah, this album's alright, actually it's fucking really good, actually it's fucking amazing, to wow, this album is fucking incredible. Like, the variation on this, and that's a lot of things that I've talked about this year, is the variation and stuff, and a lot of bands have been experimenting with their sound and trying new things to keep their sound alive, and Within Destruction definitely did that with this album, adding these new influences and making them sound not like any other band in the scene. Like, you can add, yeah, they've got influences this, they got influences that, but it doesn't sound like Within Destruction. They are a one-of-a-kind band now. Like, that Deathwish album, you could make more comparisons to it, but this one, you can't. It doesn't sound like any other album, and it is absolutely incredible to hear, and definitely a game changer in the deathcore genre, if you ask me. Fucking incredible stuff, and well done to me, true slam boys. And now we move on to the Slam Kings at number 11, and that is Ingested, Where Only Gods May Tread. And this album is a little bit of a different take on the Ingested sounds. Like, the last album, The Level Above Human, was intense, blistering, slammy, and crushingly heavy. Whereas this album takes on a bit more of a darker, more riffier aspect, kind of like a less is more sort of atmosphere to it. And it works, in my opinion, because it's the development of their sound kind of streamlined in it. And like I said in my review, they kind of teased that with the Call of the Void EP, and I loved the experimentation on that release and wanted to see more of it on the new album. And Where Only Gods May Tread is the result of that, and quite frankly, it has delivered. It's still got some slams in there for good measure. It's still got the riffs that you know and love from Ingested, but it's just taken on a new lease life to the band, adding different influences, and it really works for them. Absolutely incredible, and definitely one of the most memorable Ingested albums of their entire discography. Absolutely incredible stuff. Well done to the true Slam Kings, if you ask me. Anyway, coming in at number 10, we're cracking the top 10 now, and that has to go to Alestorm with Curse of the Crystal Coconut. And yeah, Alestorm, whether you like them or hate them, you can feel the way you want. They are kind of like a Marmite band, but man, if you love them, you are going to love this album, because it's a continuation of their style. They kind of took the more serious aspect of pirating from the first couple of albums and gone for a more video game sort of influence to their piratey delivery, you could say, or piracy delivery, you could even say. And it really gives them a little bit more to play with their overall sound. But man, this album was so fun to listen to, and every time I put it on, it put a smile on my face, as did No Grave But to See back in, I think it was 2018 when that came out. And this album is another album that puts a smile on my face and delivered on all fronts, and it was just so memorable, and I absolutely love Alestorm. Yeah, they're a Marmite band. Haters for putting them this high on the list as much as you want, but I don't give a fuck. This is my list. I love Alestorm, and this is an incredible, incredible album, and might be even one of their best. Next up, at number 9, we have Fit for a King with The Path. Now, their past couple of albums have really been late developers for me, but this album, to me, I clicked with straight away and fell in love with the heaviness, the melodicness, the power, and the grooves on there. The grooves were so fucking memorable, man. Like, I absolutely loved everything, and especially, I think it's the last track, or the second to last track, I think it's the last track, Vendetta, was another one of my favourite favourite songs of this year, and if you haven't heard that song, make sure you do so. It'll make your head bang, it'll make you stomp your foot with how heavy it is, because you know when the riffs are going to hit, and you just stomp your foot and then go, ooh, it hits the mark so much. But man, it is such an enjoyable release, and something that I listened to so much when it came out, and you just need to hear it. One of the best metalcore releases I've heard all year. Anyway, coming in at number 8, we have Amaranth with Manifest. And Amaranth, I've only really listened to one album before this one, and that was The Nexus, and I was really impressed with that album. But after listening to getting ready for this one, I thought I'm going to listen to the rest of their discography. There was only one I didn't listen to, and that was the self-titled one back before The Nexus, and I just caught up with the middle ground, you could say. But it never put a candlelight on this album, because this album, I hyped up so much how much I was excited for this, and when it dropped, man, it delivered on all fronts. It's got the melodic bits, it's got the trancey sort of bits, it's got the groove, and it's got even some metalcore elements towards the second half of the album, or the last quarter, you could say. And man, it was incredible to listen to. I love the variation in the vocals, from the male cleans to the female cleans to the harsh vocals. There is such a variation going on there. Excuse me. But the variation just made it just so likeable. Like, every part was well thought out, well executed, and man, this album absolutely killed, if you ask me, and definitely one of the most memorable albums of this year, and it made a massive fan out of me, out of Amaranth, and this is definitely my favourite album that I've listened to of these guys. Absolutely incredible stuff. Alright. Next up, coming in at number 7, we have some Funeral Doom here, with some death metal influences, and you may or may not know who it is, probably not, but it's going to go to Convocation with Ashes Coalesce. Man, this album, when it dropped, blew me away. Like, it was doomy, it was gloomy, but then it was heavy, it was suffocating, and that's what I love about Funeral Doom, is it feels suffocating, like you're at the bottom of the lowest depths of the Pacific Ocean, for example, and just getting crushed by the weight of the ocean just on top of your head. And this album definitely feels like that to listen to, and man, that riff on, I think it's the second track, you'll know the riff once you've heard it. Man, that made me want to headbang so much and just pull the sting face. Like, that sting face that I pulled when that riff came in first time was one of the best sting faces I've ever heard. And if you know the sting face, I want about that one. When the heaviness just overtakes you, that riff, man, wow. Absolutely incredible. That created so much intensity in me, more than a lot of deathcore releases did this year, and you need to hear it. Absolutely incredible album from Convocation, and it was so good to hear. Thanks. I might as well give a shout out to Everlasting Spew for sending me the promo of that album, because I was blown away. Thanks, guys, really appreciate it. Alright, coming in at number 6 would arguably be my favourite metalcore release of this year. Fit for a King was good, but man, it had some stiff competition in the shape of Make Them Suffer with How to Survive a Funeral. And man, I fell in love with this album. Like, the last couple of Make Them Suffer albums have been kind of meh, you know, like, it just didn't, like, Old Souls was better than the last one, Worlds Apart, I think it was called, or something like that. But man, this album just felt darker, it felt more groovier, and I loved everything about this album. Like, the more I listened to it, the more I fell in love with it, and it became a replayable album for me, and quite frankly, it has become my favourite Make Them Suffer album. Like, Never Bloom is a different kettle of fish compared to this album, but if I had to compare the two, I would definitely choose How to Survive a Funeral, because this album is absolutely incredible, from the clean vocals, to the harsh vocals, to the songwriting, to the overall atmosphere. It is all there, if you ask me, and it is absolutely incredible to listen to. Make sure you check out Make Them Suffer in their new album. A lot of people's been hyping up about it, and quite rightly so. Incredible stuff. Coming in at number 5, we're topping the top 5, so I'm going to talk about these two, and then I'm going to show the final 3 of the CD, as I said before. And at number 5, we have Trivium with What the Dead Men Say. And Trivium are on a roll. Yeah, they are. Like, The Sin and the Sentence is now my favourite Trivium album, but they had to continue it in some way, and they have continued it and brought the riffs, they've brought the Trivium sound to another level, if you ask me. Like, What the Dead Men Say is a perfect, and I mean perfect, continuation of the Sin and the Sentence sound, and in my opinion, it's absolutely incredible. It has the memorableness, it has the catchy, memorable hooks, that Trivium's always been known for, but it's very modern sounding. It's them growing as musicians, and I absolutely love it. They're not sticking to the same thing. They're always pushing their boundaries, adding new elements, and this is definitely the Trivium that I always wanted them to be. If you ask me, like, I've loved all their other stuff, but this is the Trivium that I'm in love with. I think it surpasses everything that I've done in the past. The Sin and the Sentence and What the Dead Men Say are absolutely incredible albums, and this is another one, if you ask me. Absolutely incredible stuff. Make sure you check out the new Trivium, which I'll be surprised if you haven't, because they are such a necessary band, should we just say. Alright, and yeah, I've got a big cup, because this is a long list. Coming in at number 4, we have Body Snatcher with This Heavy Void. Now, throughout the course of 2019, I listened to, was it The Death of Me? I think it was the last album from Body Snatcher, the deluxe version, a lot on repeat. And when they said they were bringing out a new album and they brought out the singles, I was hyped up for it. And then when it dropped, man, did I listen to this album so much, along with another album that will come in a little bit. And they both came around at the same time, and I listened to both albums on repeat. But man, Body Snatcher is easily one of the riffiest sounding albums of 2020, if you ask me. Like, it crushes, it's pounding, it's aggressive, but man, it delivers on all fronts, on groove as well, man. Like, I love the emotion on this album, and it feels aggressive, and it's sung from a lot of anxiety and inner struggles and stuff like that, and I can vouch for that sort of thing because I know what it feels like. Man, this album is just incredible from beginning to end, and I just love it. Absolutely incredible stuff. Body Snatcher with This Heavy Void, incredible stuff. Alright, next up is the top 3, and I've got the CDs right here, and we're going to whittle them down, and you are going to count down with us. Coming in at number 3, we have Viscera with Obsidian. This album was the first album I actually gave a 10 out of 10 for this year. Like, there was a lot of albums that came close, like a 9.5, but this was the first album that, in my opinion, got a 10 out of 10 from, because I absolutely love Jamie's vocals. Like, he's got such a unique sense of clarity and overall pronunciation in his vocals, and I loved all of his work from Silosis to Heart of a Coward. And I wanted to say, I always said, what would it be like if it was in like a technical death metal, deathcore oriented band? And then we got Viscera, and man, it delivered, in my opinion, and became one of my favourite albums of this year. I couldn't stop listening to this album, and I still can't stop listening to it, because from beginning to end, it's got the hooks. It's kind of got a bit of wankery in it, like flashy sort of stuff, but it really is played when it needs to be. It's not just thrown in there to show off, it's there to complement the song. But the riffs, like, there's a lot of riffs in tech death bands, like, it might surprise you, like, it's not all wankery. Viscera are definitely one of the riffiest sound in the tech death department, and this album definitely just blew me away, and something I couldn't stop listening to, and it is, in my opinion, a perfect album. 10 out of 10. I still stand by it. It is a perfect album. 10 out of 10. Fantastic stuff, and I just hope that next year I get to see them, because I need to hear these tracks live. Incredible stuff. Now, next up, I think I gave this album an 8.5, but the more I listened to it, the more it grew into a 10 out of 10 album. And yeah, coming in at number 2, we have Lorna Shore with Immortal. Yeah, think what you want about CJ, take that out of the picture, and what have you got right here? One of the best sounding deathcore albums ever written. Like, they have took the blackened deathcore style and genre to a whole new level. They did on Flesh Coffin, and I says before, how can they improve on this? Like, how can you take this to another level than what it already is? And you get Immortal, and everything about this album from beginning to end is just incredible. From the synth to the guitarist to the lead work to the drums to the backing synths to the overall atmosphere, the songs, the lyrics, everything about this album is incredible, and it has grown to a 10 out of 10 album for me. And yeah, I'm taking CJ's thing out of the picture completely, and this album rocketed up to the number 2 spot. It is absolutely fucking incredible, and it's one of the most memorable deathcore albums I've ever heard. They amped their game up with Flesh Coffin and made it a memorable deathcore album. Immortal just did that once again. What can they fucking do next? It scares me what's going to come next, and I just need to hear these songs live. Granted, it's not going to be with CJ, but I think it's Adam Mercer, I believe it is. No, not Adam Mercer. Oh, I'm forgetting his name. But their new vocalist, if he is indeed the new vocalist, I can't wait to see what he can bring to that album. Oh, sorry, to those tracks live. Absolutely incredible stuff. Lorna Shore, Immortal. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. And now we arrive at the number 1 album of 2020. And I'm just going to re-quote something that I said at the start of the video. 2020 has been a shit year, but it's had an amazing soundtrack, and these 3 albums are definitely those. And it was quite hard to pinpoint, because these 3, I've said this before in the past couple of albums of the year, that a couple could be interchangeable depending on my mood, but these 3 I would say these 3, or the top 4 even, could be interchangeable depending on my mood. So I went with what overall gave us the biggest chill of 2020, from initial listen to today, or just yesterday when I was sorting out my top albums for you today. And the one album that definitely I had to give the top album spot to was the album that just I couldn't stop listening to, and no matter what mood I was in, it always brought me mood up or made us fall in love with metal again. That sort of level. And this album was definitely it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Yeah. We're going to give you me album of the year for this year, and it has to go to The Acacia Strain with Slow Decay. Yeah, wow. The Acacia Strain. Like, it comes in waves. I know it was just one song, split into parts, but it just didn't click with me as much as I thought it would. But man, when they start teasing this album in the form of 5 EPs with 2 tracks each, every time they brought out, I would listen to that 2 tracks on repeat. Then I would listen to the next one. Then I would listen to the next one. And then listen to the next one. I was like, they're teasing something here. And then they announced Slow Decay with yet more tracks on it, 2 more tracks, to make a new full-length album. And man, did I listen to this album on repeat, like, especially with the songs like jumbled up, like they didn't flow in like DECEY, like they didn't flow in that same, it was shuffled up a little bit, and man, it just blew me away. And I listened to this album so much, and it just pounded me so much every listen, when I was sat here at my desk listening to music, whether I was downstairs doing some housework, in my car driving to work, or even when I was humming it at work. I wanted a headbang, and yes, the customers probably looked at it as strange, but in general, this album overthrown me, or overtook me, and I absolutely love this album. I think it's absolutely perfect. There is not a thing I'd change, and this is a perfect example. I said this about Ingested, that they were going for the more less is more sort of thing. Acacia Strain do that to perfection, if you ask me. Like, it's simple, it's just there to bring the riffs and simple riffs to perfect execution, and they did it on Slow Decay. And man, it was absolutely incredible to listen to, and definitely deserves my album of the year for 2020. Goes to Slow Decay by The Acacia Strain. Absolutely incredible stuff, perfect album. So yeah, that's it for me top albums of 2020. Remember, let us know in the comments, what were your top releases of the year, EP or album, or even give us your top 3, whatever. Just let us know in the comments. Leave a like if you've checked out a new band through this video, or whatever, you know, do the usual YouTuber shit and subscribe and all that shit. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought was the best releases of 2020. I'm going to try and get more into my reviews next year, because I have had a lot going on this year, and COVID aside, but I'm not going to get into that because I don't really want to talk about it at all, because there's no point. But anyway, yeah, so make sure you check out all these bands in this list, and I'll see you in 2021. And remember, stay metal, stay safe, and I'll see you later.